Brilliant. Welcome everyone. Welcome to a ThinkIn. Welcome to a Tortoise ThinkIn on Generation Z, and Generation has its say on the coronavirus crisis we're in at the moment. My name's Polly Curtis. I'm an editor and partner at Tortoise. And I should explain first what we're doing here and what a ThinkIn is. A ThinkIn is a chance really for us to gather people together and have a conversation that then fuels the journalism we go on to do. So the conversation we're having here is for everyone to share their ideas about what's happening at the moment in the coronavirus crisis, that will then influence and inform the journalism that we then go on to do as a result of this conversation. A ThinkIn lasts 1 hour. We have 182 people on this Zoom call at the moment. Normally we would be in our newsroom, gathered in real life to have this conversation, but obviously can't do that at the moment. So we're all Zoom experts now. We are recording this conversation just to flag that up front, so you know we can use bits of it in our social media and to help people hear the conversation who aren't involved. I'm getting a message about whether participants can record that conversation. If one of my colleagues can answer that question, maybe Liv, you can answer that question in the chat. Can participants record the conversation? So we have one rule in a ThinkIn, and that's that we want to hear what you think. So we ask you to tell us what you think rather than to ask lots of questions. We want to hear your views, your perspectives, and your experiences of where we are at the moment. And in this conversation, we particularly want to hear from our Gen Z members and audiences, and people who are younger, who we don't think we're hearing from very much in the media. We're not hearing that much of the experience of younger people through this really extraordinary and unprecedented crisis. So we want to hear what you think, and there are two ways you can get involved in this conversation by being here. You can either put a comment in the chat that's running down the side. So if you click on chat, you can put a comment there and get involved that way. Or you can raise your hand. So if you go onto the participants tab, there's a little grey button that says raise hand. And if you raise your hand there, and I'm going to do an experiment with this in a minute. You can see my colleague Kerry Thomas is currently raising his hand to demonstrate how that works. And you can see hands going up and down there. So if you want to have something to say, if you want to contribute to the conversation, raise your hand there or put a comment in the chat box. In the chat, you'll see my colleague Tom Goulding will be having the conversation there. Wave at everyone, Tom. Hi, Tom. He's going to be popping up and helping the conversation flow there as well, and flagging things to me to make sure that we get as many of your voices as possible involved in this conversation today. Anyone not Gen Z, you are allowed to talk and you are very welcome as well, but we're really keen to hear from our younger members in this conversation. So just to start, I'm going to ask everyone to have a little go on that blue raise your hand button. And so I'm going to ask a particular question. If you agree with this statement, raise your hand. There are two alternative statements. So the first one is, I am the kind of person who is thrilled that my exams have been cancelled. Raise your hand if that's you. We have got quite a few hands going up, but not that many. Okay, put your hands down now. Okay, raise your hand if you are the kind of person who's actually really gutted that you weren't able to show the work you've been doing, or if you were a student now, the work you would have done. Raise your hands if you're actually finding it really hard that this has changed. Wow, what a conscientious bunch you are. There are far more hands going up now. That There are lots of you. Thank you for taking part in that. So most people would actually much prefer normal life and to be able to demonstrate the work they've done in their exams. We've got lots of different people involved in this conversation today, and I wanted to come to some of our speakers who are personally affected by this at the moment. I was going to start with Molly Curling, who's from London, and I spoke with a bit earlier today about the impact on, hi Molly, hello, on the work you're doing at the moment. A mixture of diplomas and A-levels, is that right?
Yeah, so I do an A-level, I do a BTEC, and I do a diploma. So
the full range?
Yeah, so a bit of everything.
And how is it affecting you at the moment in terms of your studying?
So it's, in terms for BTEC and for finance, it's not affected me massively. For health and social care, which is the BTEC, it's more a case of you can't get that teacher support, and coursework is kind of mainly orientated around being able to talk to teachers, get that verbal feedback. And obviously you can't really do that online. So that's what I'm kind of finding most difficult with that one at the moment. Finance isn't too bothered. I'm not too affected in the sense of I've done 3/4 of my course, so they've got enough to judge me on. So I'm fairly confident in what they're going to give me with that one. And then with business, what it is where it's the A-level and where I've had other things to kind of focus on up till now, I thought to myself I'd be able to kind of put the work in nearer the time, whereas obviously now I haven't got that. And our students will kind of agree that with A-levels, a lot of people pull it out the bag nearer the time. And I feel like now they're not going to be able to kind of get that opportunity to put the work in for the exam, and it might not be a true reflection of what they could have actually got.
So you were planning to kind of really backload the study for your A-level, but now that chance has been taken away from you effectively.
Yeah, because where I was just trying to prioritise that what I had at the moment and what I kind of had more time to prepare for. Obviously, business wasn't the top of my priorities, and I would have had those last couple of months to bunk up my ideas, get that revision in, and the after class, etc. But obviously now I can't, and it's going to be on those kind of mock grades and pre-assessments, which I feel like obviously everyone takes seriously, but at the end of the day, everyone still views them as a mock because they're aware that they've got that time till their exam.
So I'm really interested. We're going to talk about other issues outside of the schools and university system as well, because I know not all young people are studying at the moment. But we're going to dig into this a bit more first. I can see Sophia Guilfoyle in the chat is telling us that she's struggling to get feedback from your teacher or to talk to people really easily. If we could come to Sophia, maybe Sophia could tell us a bit more about this. Hi, Sophia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We can see a lovely picture of a dog. If you do fancy turning your camera on, feel free, but we are enjoying the dog as well.
I've gotten used to staying at home.
So tell us how it's working for you, Sophia.
I'm in year 12, so obviously my exams haven't been cancelled, but I'm not in that school environment, and I don't have that ability to talk to teachers as easily. And on top of that, they're obviously having various meetings, talking, and so even if I send an email, it's still like covered by the spam of like COVID-19 news, and it would take me like days to get a response rather than an hour.
And are your teachers still setting you lots of work? Are you getting a constant stream of schoolwork to do at home?
We're pretty much getting the same amount as I would within school. And it's a bit, obviously now I have more time because I'm doing less extracurriculars since the lockdown. And so I have all this time where I would be like working on my EPQ and discussing with teachers and other coursework, but I can't talk to them. So it's a lot of independent work, but sometimes I just don't have the knowledge to do it.
Thank you, Sophia. Molly, do you recognise a lot of that? Is it a similar experience for you?
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, my teachers have been pretty helpful in the sense of they've given us all their phone numbers, and they have said, occurring on there. But yeah, it's a lack of, you've got a lack of motivation when you're at home, like you're not in that school environment where you're in a classroom, you know you're there to do work, like you're surrounded by everything that can easily distract you. It is completely different, and the environment is so much harder to actually kind of sit there and focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot more distractions. I'm just reading Digby's comments in the chat. He says he's getting more work set now than he did before, so that seems quite unlucky. I've got a couple of hands up here. Shall we come to Robson Augusta, who I know from Grimsby. Sam, can you bring Robson up? I'd love to hear how things are going in Grimsby. How are you, Robson?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very good. I'm the same as Sophia. I'm in year 12, so my exams haven't been affected apart from my mocks. But when it comes to work, and it teaches too, we've got one webinar per subject per week. So we've gone from having 4 hours of contact time with teachers to an hour and a half. And the independent learning's gone up. And we've got to the point in year 12 where we're hitting the harder subjects before going into year 13. And that's led to how complex the work's got, plus the idea that we've got to figure out how to get our predicted grades for our university applications. So it's caused, let's say, a lot of stress for some students, and that's caused little mental health problems, and that's what I'm most worried about. I'm not too worried about myself, my friends and fellow pupils who've got severe mental health issues that are going to be more affected by the lockdown.
I mean, without naming any of your friends or any of that, how is that kind of pressure manifesting for them? What's their experience?
One of my friends, he's been working ridiculous amount of time. One day it was several days it's been 8 o'clock in the morning until gone midnight, and he's been isolating himself from his family in the house, locking himself away and doing the work. I see that, and he's been doing that day after day after day. That is not going to do any good for him. Some other people have just found it impossible to learn. They're just getting stressed out because they don't understand the work. Some people don't. Myself, I would struggle to read a textbook and learn from that. People have got the same issue with me, but instead of trying, and it's now become, we have to learn in certain ways. We don't have the wide range that we do when we're at school.
Yeah, that's worrying to hear. And I suppose when you're working at home as well, it's harder to set the boundaries and take downtime and compartmentalize your life as well. Thank you, Robson. Thank you very much for that. I can see another hand up, Shakeel Mohammed. If we could come to Shakeel, Sam, that would be brilliant.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Shakeel.
Hi. So in my position, I would say things are a little bit different for me. I'm 17. I'm in year 12. I'm currently studying a level 3 BTEC in public services. So
we're going to need you.
Pardon?
We're going to need you very much to help us.
Of course. As you know, the course was originally designed for those students that wanted to join the military. Well, you can do a lot of things with it as well, but one of the key factors is the military aspect, and my teachers are ex-military and whatnot. But the annoying thing for me is that even though I have the assignments and things, but some of them are based off practical assessments, and you know, since we're going through this lockdown, we cannot do those practical assessments. Therefore, we cannot, you know, do our assignments that are based off those. So it really affects our grades and our sort of mental health. And another point I wanted to explain was, I don't know about any other areas that do public services, but in my college in particular, we are quite separate from the college itself. So we start earlier, we finish later than regular students, and not only have our school trips and our camping military training has been cancelled, but it's gotten to a point where we either have this mentality where we're stressed out or we don't care at all, and that's the public service mentality. So I feel like that's something that needs to change, and it's a little bit difficult, and we don't have that support from teachers.
So is it that teachers don't have a method to support you, or you know, why do you think there is this kind of blocker for you getting the kind of support you need?
Well, likewise to the previous conversations, we're using Zoom a lot more and we have their numbers on the group chat. We're doing a lot more sort of constituency feedback and progress, but it's just not the same as being in a classroom. And when it comes to fitness, for example, I've got schoolmates, classmates that want to go into the Royal Marines and the Army, for example. How are they supposed to do that when the teachers are sending them exercise videos? Like, it doesn't work that way if we're not going through proper training.
So some of it's just impossible to do.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say is that as we go through this conversation, I did want to ask people what they're doing to kind of cope with some of the difficulties around this. So, you were talking a bit about the pressure you're finding of not being able to do your work and the stress that creates. What are your coping strategies?
My coping strategies?
Yeah.
So, well, I have to try and get myself in a routine. I feel like setting daily goals is a really good thing for me, always having something to work towards. I'm the type of person where I'm always on that 5 o'clock early start. I have to wake up no matter what. Whether I only get a couple hours sleep, I don't care. I'll wake up. I have to start my day early. I have to start it fresh, and I have to, do whether it's exercise in the morning or, I always believe that likewise, your muscle your brain is a muscle. So likewise, you have to train it with high and low intensity. So it may not mean that I'm gonna do an assignment and go solid at it for a few hours. It may mean that to power my brain, I may need to read a newspaper or a book in the morning just to get myself sorted. And if I feel really stressed out, maybe I'd go for a run outside, my daily exercise, and that would be good because it's correlating to my fitness. Because as you know, we have fitness assessments when we come back, and since the fitness tests will not be taking place and they can't do it from home, that means the points that we score when we come back have to be twice or maybe triple the points that we would have scored last time. So it's got that pressure physically and mentally for us. But I feel like if you just stay on a regimen where you're physically and mentally training, and
you're finding the routine is really important to kind of keep things going. I can see some more hands coming up. So should we come to Jelena and then Catherine Callahey? Sam, if you could find Jelena.
Hello.
Catherine. Hi, Jelena. Hello.
I think my video might be about to start, so don't get startled if you just see a huge face. Is it working? Can you see me?
We will find. We can hear you. So why don't you start?
Okay.
What your experience is at the moment?
Sure. So I'm actually in my 4th year of university, and I've been reflecting quite a lot on my experience of education. I went to a grammar school and I stayed there for 6th form, so I've come from quite a high pressure academic background. And I've actually just published a piece. I'm going to put it into the chat just now. That is looking on how coronavirus might actually be an opportunity to reform our education system for the better. Because I think that this moment of panic and listening to everyone's responses and seeing really like how troubled everyone has been, both with respect to how we're going to now assess students, will we look at prior material, how will we look at it? I think that actually really exposes this fundamental problem in our education system, rather, that we're so focused on exams and on target setting and meeting targets as a form of assessing students. And I don't think that's healthy. I think there are lots of studies that say that it's really not healthy. But I think that this moment of panic should really force us to be more introspective and think, okay, how can we develop our education system moving forwards to make sure that we're not kind of stuck in this situation again.
Jelena, that's such an interesting point. We'll definitely all take a read of the piece you've written. What would you do differently? Is it the moving away from a very exams heavy system, or what would be the key to reforming it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been going over this in my head so much recently, thinking about what my ideal education system would look like. And I think for me, it needs to be much more focused on participation and on work that is conducted throughout the year. And that, in my article as well, I mentioned this. That's why I think that coronavirus could actually be one of the best things for our education system if it means that teachers who will innately have a much better knowledge of their students, both in their participation, in their success, in how they've progressed, than a 2-hour exam that could go well on the day, might not go well on the day, is completely arbitrary, really, as a form of assessment. So yeah, I think much more focused on participation throughout the year. There should also be, we should have more assessments throughout the year that are smaller and cumulative, instead of resting everything on one exam at the end. I was talking about this with my friend earlier, and we're quite fortunate. And like I said, I had quite a rigorous schooling. And in that sense, I was committed to my mocks. I was committed to every single piece of work I handed in. I know that that's not the case across different schools. So if we had an education system that did encourage these kind of more holistic, more regular forms of assessment, rather than encouraging everyone to just revise for the final exam, I think that would mean that along the way you would have enough work to be able to assess students on the basis of that, rather than relying on one final piece.
Jelena, I absolutely love the fact that you seem to have taken this opportunity to redesign the education system.
Honestly, please get them in touch with me, because I've been thinking about it so much, and listening to everyone, it really does break my heart, because it just shows that it's a really fundamental problem that lies at the heart of the system. But on a positive note, I think this could be a really good opportunity to reform it more wholly.
Thank you for that. Catherine Callaghay, can we come to Catherine now? And then Sam, maybe Phoebe Davis straight afterwards. Hi, Catherine, how are you?
Hi, I'm okay. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks. Good, thanks. What did you want to say?
So I just wanted to comment on a really important question that I think you raised, was about how are you coping with it every day? Because I've been in touch with quite a lot of people about how they're coping with the situation, and I think there's kind of a lack of coping mechanisms being discussed. So I really think it's important, because I'm a second year at university right now, and there's so much uncertainty at the moment. Like, there's no clarity in regards to our exams. Like, it's just being finalized now how it's going to work, and we're having all our essays being postponed, and that just keeps on changing. And this happens on top of the strike that just happened by the UCU. So there's so much uncertainty, and it's been like that for months on end now. So I just think it's really important to talk about these different coping mechanisms. And I definitely think what was said by the guy you were talking to earlier, he said this whole thing about maintaining a routine, maintaining exercise. I've been doing meditations every single day. I think that's really important, to make sure that you're kind of keeping yourself calm, and then also making sure that you're staying in touch with people. And I just wish that there was so much more support for students, because I've tried to reach out to a lot of people, like a lot of the faculty members and the staff at my university. And it takes so long to get responses, because they're being so overwhelmed right now, which I can appreciate, but you're still kind of left alone in this situation.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. I'm just reading some of the comments that are coming up in the chat. There's a really interesting point from Emily Williams about the research which shows that some teacher assessments disadvantages pupils from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So there is a potential for problems to crop up in that way. I just wondered, I know that there are a few teachers here, and I would just ask if you're brave enough to pop up in the chat and talk about it from your perspective, because one of the things we really want to do at Tortoise is hear every side of the story, and I'm sure teachers are finding it really difficult not to be able to kind of see through the rest of the terms with their students. So if there are any teachers who have a view about what it feels like from their perspective, that would be brilliant. Wow, there's lots in the chat here. Can I come to Kaxi, who is an apprentice, who I spoke with earlier. Kaxi, are you there? So Kaxi, you are with White Hat Apprentices, I think. And we talked earlier about the mental health issue again, but also how it changes your household when people coming in and out of work around you as well. Have we lost you, Caxie? Okay, let's try.
I'm here.
Oh, hello. Hi. Sam, I'm going to come to Tom Collyer after this, but Caxie, can you talk us through a bit of your experience at the moment and how you're managing the current situation?
So my schooling, my apprenticeship is still ongoing, so I still get Zoom interactive lessons with my coach, and it's very much only 20 of us, less than that even, and I always get like my time with her for feedback, and she's always in touch with me. I'm still full-time working, which is like a blessing, because both my parents, who is a nanny and a chef, have been let go because of COVID until further notice. So that's kind of given the bigger responsibility for me to like pay for the bills. But you know, it's nothing that I won't. I'm still working.
Yeah. And are you finding that? I mean, that must be quite stressful to be bearing quite a lot of the financial responsibility.
Yeah, I guess so, but because it's not their fault. You know, if they could like go out and they would, but like there's no point in kind of forcing them to find a job and risk their health and risk other people as well.
Yeah. And what have you got any coping strategies that you can share with the room?
Always have like a massive to-do list with like personal, professional, making sure that, you know, like it was mentioned earlier, like you wake up, like you have a schedule, and kind of just taking care of yourself. So I recently learned how to knit, and some of my friends found that weird, like a 21-year-old knitting. But I find it like a nice downtime to kind of keep my mind off of like, you know, what's happening everywhere, because being on social media all the time, it's like lots of negative information and messages. Like, you know, you get a funny meme here and there, but ultimately it's all about COVID right now, and all the things that, you know, like families, like students going home and not having a safe space, and like there's so many things that we don't even hear about, that which is like, this is such a great opportunity to talk about, because then we know, like we're more aware of what's happening, and kind of being there with friends, making sure that you know, you have that quality of catching up now, because everyone has the time to be able to, and making sure that you're there for each other, for your friends, and that like they're there for you, and kind of listening in. Yeah.
Are you talking to your friends more now than you normally would?
No, I don't think so, but I guess like people are reaching out to kind of like just say, how are you, and like, oh, have you gone for a run today, to make like checking up on you and stuff. We've got that at work as well, so everyone's got like virtual yoga and virtual high intensity training classes, to make sure that everyone's kind of.
I'm going to move on because the line is freezing a little bit. Just to mention in the comments, we've got Jamie Bale, who says it's worth bearing in mind that faculty have been swamped by non-academic related chores for a long time now. So teachers are having to spend so long on administrative and bureaucratic duties. At this moment, they're more swamped than ever. I think they need commending for putting up with badly run institutions. So that's kind of getting into a bit of a different point of view, and trying to understand the teacher's point of view. Tara says, as a teacher, I'm worried about how it will impact the current cohort of year 10s in particular, who have little experience of independent learning and are being forced to miss out on vast amounts of contact time. That's an interesting perspective as well. Tom, are you there? Tom Collyer, one of our student ambassadors. Hello, how are you?
I'm all right, thanks.
Hi, Tom. So we talked a little bit earlier about the double impact of the strikes as well. That's something that one of the other speakers talked about, and how that's affected university educations in the last few months.
Yeah, well, it was great. Yeah, great that someone's already mentioned it. So there were the lecturers, lots of the lecturers went on strike just at the beginning of semester 2 for us, and which has made the timing of the coronavirus shutdown really not, a really bad time, because lots of students at university at the moment have basically had virtually no tuition for the whole of semester 2, and so I think it's extremely important that that university students are supported through that, and I think that's why we're really lucky at Southampton that we've had a no detriment policy implemented. So that's when whatever grade you got in semester 1, you now cannot get lower than that as long as you complete all of your outstanding work. So that's been a really big pressure off for most of us. Those of us who didn't screw up semester 1, and the people that did screw up semester 1 still have the chance of redeeming themselves, albeit a bit harder because they're working from home, and may not have had that help in semester 2. So yeah, I think that's really a big relief for us at Southampton, and I know Exeter has it and a few other universities, and I think it's really important that all of the students of all the other universities, and I obviously support them all, really pile on the pressure to their upper management to try and get that no detriment policy put in place.
Policy means that you can't do worse than you were on course to do. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. It'd be quite interesting to audit what all the universities' policies are around that, to kind of get a sense of who's adopting the best practice.
Yeah, and I think there's been a bit of variation, and I think it was at Bristol, I read in an article at their university newspaper this morning, them calling it unclear and saying that there were too many little extra clauses in it. But I think overall, if a university's put in a no detriment policy, I think that's overall a positive thing.
And we talked a bit about this earlier, but do you, so there have been some people saying, well, we need a fee discount, we've lost half a year of our education, we're getting into debt for life. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's a interesting one, that. Obviously I don't have the stats to hand, but just by what I see myself, it tends to be the people that are in favour of the strikes, who want the fees back, sort of understandably on a intuitive level of, you feel like they're exploiting the workforce, so you don't want to give them your money, and I'm someone who's in support of the strikes as well, but I personally really don't agree with that, that there should be refunds for fees, because that's giving universities another sort of financial strain that gives them an opportunity to use it as an excuse. So I think if there was more pressure that goes on, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere, I don't think any amount of people screaming, give us our money back, is going to do anything really.
I can see lots of hands going up, but I want.
Yeah, I mean, people, please do have a go at me for that one, because I'm not entirely made up my mind yet.
If anyone has a view on whether you should have fees back, get stuck in the chat. I wanted to come to Louis Gershon. Sam, if you could find Louis Gershon for us, and hello, hi, how are you?
I'm well. I'm a second year full-time student. I'm studying English Lit and Theatre Studies, and it's been more than tough. I've had to recently return to London from my university in Glasgow. I suffered very severely the virus, both mentally and physically, and although I'm pleased to say I'm almost recovered bar any lack of taste or smell. So I'm due to be studying abroad for my 3rd year as an international exchange. But with the exams and assessments shut down, including a graded theatre performance, which we spent over 11 weeks in production, it's like so many undergraduates, it feels as though all the work I've put in this year has just gone to waste, and I'm unsure as to whether I'm actually going to be able to go abroad. I've been in contact with all my teachers, but we still have no idea whether I can book this flight or whether I should be renewing my flat. It's all very uncertain, and I think not saying any goodbyes, having to leave my university without being able to say goodbye to any of my friends has just felt kind of unfair. And I recently lost one of my closest members of my family to the virus, and it's more like if you're a workaholic, there's a kind of emptiness, being stuck in limbo, having everything taken away from you, and yet you are being told to remain calm and follow procedures. And I can only say that distractions are not exactly healthy. Lots of students are making forums and social media pages, looking at memes, watching Netflix. Yet, if you don't look at the news, you're becoming uninformed. And if you do, you're kind of misinformed. And I'm just trying to keep it sane, really. I think having had the virus and looking back at the week, I literally took an audio recording and actually figured how this affected me mentally. Looking back at that, I think it's a chain reaction that's beginning to affect many students. And it's a very slow and insidious way, but I think it's something that needs to be talked about. And especially if universities can do that and be in touch with their students about coping mechanisms, that's something that should be on the agenda, I think. Going back to what Tom said, yeah, I do agree with the UCU on strike, and looking back, it's actually been, I think I've only had about 70% of my teaching, and it's very unfortunate that the coronavirus had to hit home. But with aesthetic subjects like mine, which is only personal, English lit and theatre, where you have to use your head and your heart to experience the foundation of the arts, it feels as though I haven't achieved what I was set out to achieve. And because of that, I don't really know what I'm going to do going forwards in terms of what did I miss out on? What can I do myself at home now that I have time? Because, you know, time's everything. We have time on our hands right now to do a lot of things you want to do. You can write lists and do many different things. But if you have an objective at university and that university objective has been taken away, then you have to create your own pathways to fulfill an objective that you're not qualified to teach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much for sharing that. I'm so sorry for your loss. There's a lot of comments in the chat as well of people sending solidarity to you and sympathy for your loss. So thank you very much for contributing that, and actually picking up on some of the chat as well, linking to what you were just talking about. Social media in all of this, and the normal media as well, all kinds of media. There's so much information, and there's an interesting point being made in the chat that actually there's quite a lot of solace as well in social media. The memes are actually the thing that's cheering me up a lot, the ones that go around my WhatsApp groups, and you know, Zoom, being in a room with 200 people now, actually just listening to your experiences, that cheers me up a lot, because you feel connected to people. Do you think on balance, Lou, you're finding kind of the information helpful and the digital environment helpful, or more stressful?
It's very hard to say. I think it's everything's individual. Like, memes are great. You know, I've seen a lot of memes. I've actually laughed at my parents about some of the virtual stuff that's going on. But there's some things that obviously it's hard to say. I think there can be things that are taken too far. And of course, if you don't know someone who's been affected by the virus, or you haven't had it yourself, and, you know, talking about the pandemic before this actually happened, you know, chatting to my flatmates and joking about that back in Glasgow about, oh yeah, the virus is coming, let's just get it, let's just get immunity. Actually, when you go through something, or you know someone who's been experienced it, the point you've just made, like, it can go either way. Depending on who you are, depending on how you react to certain situations, whether it's a solace to you, it might not be a solace to someone else, and that, you know, can halve the nation. You can have some people saying, oh, I find that very entertaining, and another half thinking that's not funny. But that's of course the nature of social media, and that's how it works. So we have to argue, you know, how is social media actually affecting us in this time of self-isolation, which it is.
Thank you so much. There's lots more people we want to hear from. Can we come to Digby? If we can find Digby to chat to us. Hi, Digby. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Yeah. Remind us how old you are, Digby. I've seen you in our newsroom a lot.
I'm 14, so I was currently in year 10, although at this rate I probably won't be going back to school until I'm year 11. So.
And how's it been for you? How's that experience been?
It's been interesting, because as it was mentioned earlier, year 10, you're kind of like not yet at the point of working individually. So some people I know are doing it pretty well. They're getting up in the morning, they're doing the work, working through it, it's all fine. But the majority of people don't get up, kind of do one or two things, and then just trail off and start watching Netflix. And now they're looking at all of the work they've got and like, Jesus, I'm far behind. So it kind of feels like also a lot of the subjects that we've got, such as art or drama, are becoming quite difficult because, for example, I do art and we were trying to complete our final pieces for the first module of our coursework. But the issue is, to make a final piece, you need access to a wide range of materials. You need canvas, you need paints, you need a lot of newspaper, etc., etc. And a lot of people don't have access to that, especially from disadvantaged economic backgrounds. So when we're suddenly being told to do these big pieces of artwork, we can't actually physically do it. Lots of people don't have access to the resources that they need to make this art.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point, Digby. Thank you. I'm just reading in the chat Jamie Bell's comments about the idea that what we're talking about in this conversation is something that's been coming through a lot of our conversations in ThinkIns recently about the fragility of the system and the fragility of the state and how much the education system is struggling with this after being thinned out. We ran a piece on Monday looking at the health system and how it's been run in such a lean way that it has no ability to, or very little ability, or it takes a lot to step up to a challenge like this. And it's interesting to think about the education system in that context as well. I wanted to make sure that we came to Kira Charlton, who works does some work with the Young Women's Trust. And Kira is a mum from Surrey, so she's, and I think, studying law as well. Kira, are you there? How are we doing, Kira? Okay, we can come back to Kira. We've got another person on the line, Jack Johnston, who is a member of the Youth Parliament for North Tyneside. So going up to Newcastle. Hi, Jack. How are you?
Right to the northeast. Hello.
Right to the northeast, and we had an exchange on Twitter earlier, didn't we, about exams, but also about kind of some of the labelling that's going on about young people and how they're following the rules. Do you want to tell us what you think?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a stigma about young people in particular being branded as, like, you know, sort of reckless, flouting the rules, when really what I've seen, the majority of people, they are concerned. You know, they were out clapping for the NHS, but they've just been indoors and they've been following the government's guidelines absolutely perfectly. But it feels like the blame is kind of being, even, it's totally unfounded, but the blame is kind of on younger people from what I've seen on social medias.
And where do you think that blame's coming from? Is it just people, you know, where are you sensing it?
Well, I think it's the stereotype, obviously, but it was interesting on Facebook. There was a photo going around in my area of a big group of, you know, classic sort of big group of boys, quite intimidating sort of thing. Turns out the photo was from a couple of years ago, so it's not. I don't know why it's happening, but I think people quite like the narrative of them sort of placing the blame on younger people, I guess, when it's all ages really who, I mean, the majority of people, as I said, are, you know, following the rules, but it's all ages who are breaking the rules as well. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Samaira Saleem has got her blue hand waving in the air as well. Samaira, are you there? Hi, hello, how are you? We also had an exchange on Twitter earlier. What was the point you wanted to make, Samaira? Well, there's a very poor sound quality.
Into university charity at work.
Samaira, I'm so sorry. I don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Let's try.
You...
No, I'm
Hello?
Oh, hello. Sorry, screwing up the technology. Sorry. Can I hear you now? I think, Samaira, if you go into the chat and leave a comment there, we'll be able to respond and pick up on your point there. Sorry, we can't hear you at the moment.
No worries.
We've got lots more hands up, and only 14 more minutes to go. So I'm going to come to Hilai Kahari. It'd be great to hear what Hilai has to say.
Good evening. I hope you're doing well.
Very well. How are you?
Great. Sorry, it's just weird to look up myself. So I'm currently a final year student, and when I started my final year, I came with this mindset that it's going to be a great year because I did a placement the year before, and then I thought I don't want to spend the whole year just studying, but just making the most out of it for extracurricular activities, volunteering, and everything. And then coming closer to January, I planned the whole year out. So what I was going to do in June, a lot of more volunteering. I secured an internship during the summer, and I was going to do my LPC. But due to the virus, everything changed. So there was like a stop on everything I was currently doing. And my university has been very supportive, and I really appreciate the work that the lecturers and the teachers and all the staff have been doing. Because as much as we're affected, they're affected as well, because they're trying their best to make possible solutions. But when you asked in the beginning whether I'm thrilled, whether we're thrilled to not have our exams cancelled, or if our exams were cancelled, I couldn't answer. I'm not thrilled that my exams are not cancelled. I think that we still have a chance. I have the chance to like demonstrate my ability to do well in the exams rather than my predicted grades. But we have our exams through online now. And that is a method that I personally have never ever done before. So we have a timed condition where we'll be given a question at proposed time, and then we have 2.5 hours to type out the answer. Now this in itself poses a lot of problems. So first of all, I'm not great at typing, so I'm extremely slow. The second thing is that there's a lot of disturbance. I come from a very large family, so it's great to have them along, but at the same time, they can be very disturbing. And then the technicality, there might be connection issues. So, and then there's also a bit of inconsistency where for some of the subjects, they've allowed coursework examination, and also for some of them, they have just completely removed the exams. So it's good that they're having different options, but the fact that they're only providing it to certain individuals, that's like a bit of, I don't know, I find it really difficult. So instead of providing it to certain individuals, I think they should open up options. So ask us how we would like to be examined. So that way they have like a perspective of how exactly what we would want, and at the same time we can still do the examination. And the one thing that really, really upset me, and it might not be a big issue, is that I'm not going to have a graduation, so a proper ceremony. So all these years of education, all this year of hard work, and in the end, no graduation. Apparently we might have a virtual graduation, and there's so many memes online saying, oh, I'm going to get my degree while on my bed, or while I'm having my breakfast, or brushing my teeth. So I'm still thinking about how I'm going to get my degree, in what position. But that's something that, it's something that I really wanted to go through a graduation, but it's not going to happen. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make most of my time, use it as a positive, because now that everything's on a hold, I have much more time. I can do a lot of things. So obviously, I have to do revision on the side, but there's things that I wanted to do before I couldn't do because I was so occupied. So I'm very interested in learning many languages, and currently I'm in the process of learning Korean through watching a lot of Korean dramas. So I know a few words here and there. And then my next target is Thai. There's also a online United Nations volunteering opportunity where you can help with various things like advertising, marketing, administration. There's also something called a charity called The Mix. And then there you can volunteer to give advice to anyone under the age of 25 on matters related to like money, finance, university, relationships, just generally mental health. So yeah, there's
that's an amazing.
You know, everything's on hold. Everything's going on. So.
We'll make sure we share your list with everyone after this.
Okay.
I'm just seeing in the chat lots of people are picking up on that point of not being able to graduate and how disappointing that is. And there were a couple of people talking about not, you know, finishing their year without realizing it was the last day of the year.
Definitely.
Of March, just being so such a disconcerting experience. We've got lots more hands up, and I want to get to as many people as possible before our hour finishes. We've got Lorenzo Migliorato.
Close enough, yeah.
Lorenzo, hi.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to keep it brief and make it more of a cue, really, for, well, I'm 25, so I straddled the line a bit, I guess, between millennial and Gen Z. But essentially, you know, taking a bit more of a long view, as in what comes after university, you know, in terms of the marketplace and everything. I was just curious about really how many people aged, I don't know, born in 95 or later, how vividly they recall the aftermath of 2008 and 2009, and you know, essentially, how do they feel going into, you know, stupid as it may sound, into their first recession, which is said to be, you know, maybe as big as the last one? Because personally, I barely recall anything of what was happening in 2008. I do recall rather vividly the sovereign crisis, so a couple of years later, being in Italy. So that one, well, it didn't feel scary, as in, obviously, you know, I didn't grasp the full implications of it. But, you know, having both parents in civil service, and, you know, hearing that the government of all people, and, you know, never mind that that it was, you know, we don't have our own, like the Bank of England, we don't have our own independent monetary authority. But essentially, you know, it feels a bit like a curse, if you want, in the sense that we went through we went through one big recession, in the early 2010s, and now here comes another one that it's probably going to be, you know, somewhat, maybe not milder, but the hope is that, you know, as soon as we get the virus under control, you know, there's going to be a rebound. But, you know, I'm kind of curious how it feels for somebody. I'm in employment now, but for somebody who's maybe not about to go into employment, but who's starting to plan their career, you know, and you know, there's lots of we've heard from lots of people who are studying English lit, or, you know, somebody studying theatre, and I mean, I myself studied philosophy at the time, so, you know, nothing directly applicable with technical skills.
It's a really big point that this is a generation kind of emerging into suddenly emerging into an economic future that's very, very uncertain, and a very different experience. Thank you for that. We've got Hermione Fullerton with her hand up, and Sophie as well.
Hi. I go to Bristol, so I thought it was interesting to say maybe a bit about the Bristol perspective or what I know about that. But just answering that last question about the recession, I think is a really valid point. I myself also do English literature, and I think I remember I was reasonably young. I was probably about 10 or 11 years old in 2008 when the recession hit, and relatively sheltered, I think, by your parents about what's going on. But I do remember it being very, very a time where there was a lot of inconsistency and uncertainty. Both my parents are self-employed, so it's the same situation now with uncertainty. And I think when you're that much older, you start to worry about them in a different way. So in terms of pensions and schemes like that will now be affected in that when they're coming out of work. And I mean, I heard something about how 11 years of progress since 2008 in our economy has been wiped out in about 11 weeks because of this pandemic. So I think as someone that is doing something that's not vocational and that is to do with links and the experience you can get, very much something that I would have been doing this summer as I'm going into my final year of university has been completely shut down. So I think it's such a valid worry. And I think especially because we're a generation where we've been hit by university costing us so much. So previously the people that were just coming out of university in 2008, they didn't necessarily have massive student debts that they were going to have to kind of take into consideration when they were going into work. But for our generation that have been kind of the first, I mean, maybe in the last 6 years, being the people that are paying for university and coming out of university into a massive amount of debt, and then coming into this uncertainty, is something that is going to be really difficult. And also, I think just read Bristol and what's been mentioned before about no detriment policy. They've started to give us some indication about what's going to happen now, but as was mentioned before, it's still very uncertain. We're getting emails kind of saying we're going to have to go through thousands of units at a time to realize what can be done to kind of mitigate and measure things like that. But yeah, after strikes, for someone like that does English, we have very few contact hours. I think a lot of people that study English literature or studies like this, you very much bounce off the environment that you're in about university. It's discursive. And we've already had emails from our tutors telling us that these online seminars that they're trying to set up when we would have gone back in 3 weeks' time after the Easter holiday, they said, we know that you can't have the length of discussion that's going to happen, that would happen in a classroom, but we're doing the best we can. So that following strikes, it makes it really difficult to start thinking about dissertation and all of those kind of things. So it's really difficult, but yeah, as well, like rent is something that's come up a lot with our friends and people who have been on year abroads who they've been told to come back, for example, in Spain, and all of their stuff is still in Spain because they just had to get on a plane before the borders were shut and before all the flights were cancelled. So they don't know what they're going to do about being able to collect their things and yeah, re-signing for next year. And Bristol is somewhere specifically, I think, that's been targeted with mental health issues. We've had a lot in the past about people, obviously the conversation surrounding Bristol specifically, but we already have a really overburdened administrative team here, whether it be with wellbeing or with faculties, specifically in the humanities. So the idea that this is really affecting people's mental health, but then they're just, one, not being the personal one-to-one chats that people can have, or the kind of safe space of having a wellbeing meeting, but also just the fact that it's overburdened now, and this is definitely going to be a catalyst to cause a lot more problems in the future, and the repercussions.
Thank you so much. Just conscious of time here, can we come to Sophie as our last speaker? We're very up against it in time, but Sophie, are you there? Sophie with an F.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So I do a BTEC. I'm in year 13, so I do a level 3 in business. So as far as we were made aware when it all came out about A-levels and stuff, our tutor said to us, she went, don't worry, it's nothing to do with you because you're doing a BTEC, so yours is...
I think Sophie's frozen. Yeah, sorry, Sophie.
Affect you. Hello?
Have one last go, Sophie.
Sorry. So basically we were told that it's not going to affect you, don't worry about it, you'll carry on lessons as normal. So we have been, and then in the last few days quite a lot of us have been receiving emails from university, the universities we are applying to and going to, saying that we're still waiting to hear our BTEC students, and we're like, so we sent our tutor, we were like, so what's going on, like, is this affecting us or not? And she went, we have no idea. So we're still carrying on as normal, but as far as our tutor's aware, all the work we've done towards our units could just be wiped for us to still get a predicted grade, even though we're constantly working on it.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you everyone for taking part and making such a huge range of comments. There is so much more we could talk about here, digging into the issues that you've raised on social media, force for good or bad. A comment came up in the chat also pointing out that it was mainstream media actually propelling some of the myths around coronavirus as well. Very interesting points in the chat around fake news and helping people navigate information in this age as well. I really loved what Jelena had to say about taking this moment to think, is this the right education system to be judging people on? Is it fit for purpose, and is this testing it in a way that it's just not living up to what we need from it? So many fascinating contributions and things that we'll take into our reporting. I think we should look at doing an audit on those university policies to work out what is the best practice and who's delivering and who's not. There are lots of thoughts that we will now take away from this conversation and feed into our commissioning and our journalism and into future think-ins as well. I think we could have done 10 think-ins out of the conversation we had tonight because you all had such brilliant things to say. And we hope you'll become a member of Tortoise. You get a free trial having signed up. Do become a member, join our students, can join for free as well. And really look forward to seeing you all at another one of these think-ins. Thank you very much.